This interview is with Carl Winter, Professor Emeritus of Cooperative Extension in the Department of Food Science and Technology. He was appointed in 1991 and retired in 2019. Carl's research and outreach efforts focused on the potential health risks of chemical contaminants in the food supply. He developed novel methods for estimating health risks resulting from pesticide residues, naturally occurring toxins, and heavy metals in foods. Carl worked with regulators, legislators, health officials, consumers, academic scientists, and agricultural officials to broadly disseminate critical food safety information. He gave nearly 1,000 media interviews and provided invited testimony for the U.S. Congress on 3 occasions. Carl's communication abilities were recognized with several awards, including the 2012 Borlaug Communication Award from the Council for Science and Agriculture. In addition to using traditional communication media, Carl developed a popular musical approach for food safety education, using parodies of popular songs with their lyrics altered to teach broad audiences about food safety. His musical efforts led to nearly 300 live performances in 37 U.S. states and distribution of nearly 30,000 music CDs and DVDs. He is interviewed by his friend and colleague, Mary Delaney, Professor Emerita of Animal Science.
Well, good morning, Carl.
Morning, Mary.
Really looking forward to our discussion this morning. It's my delight to be interviewing you on your reflections of your career. And I'll start off with just get the ball rolling. And you're an Aggie. I didn't know that about you. But you graduated with a BS degree in 1980 in the major of environmental toxicology, and then your PhD in 1987 in agricultural and environmental chemistry. And you went right away to a faculty position at one of the sister campuses, UC Riverside, as an assistant extension food technologist, and you stayed there for 4 years before you joined UC Davis as an assistant specialist in cooperative extension food toxicologist in the Department of Food Science and Technology. That was 1991 in our College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences. And then, fast forward, we're going to fill it in. You retired as a professor in cooperative extension with emeritus status in 2019 after 28 years of service. So we'll start off by talking about what you might describe as your early years. Okay. And what was Carl Jr. like, and how did he get from wherever to here?
Yeah, so I grew up in Sacramento area in Carmichael. I went to public schools, lived in a working class neighborhood. My father was an engineer for the state of California. My mother was a piano teacher. I was the third of 3 children, all that came out within 3 years. So my parents were really had a lot going on. Then my older sister went to UC Davis, so I knew about UC Davis, and I didn't really cast a wide net looking at colleges, but UC Davis looked nice, so I applied and I got in, and I just loved my time as an undergraduate. It was so nice to get away from home for the first time and see a different group of friends. I had a great time. I was very serious about my studies, but I also found time to play a lot of basketball, play a lot of softball, play a lot of music. I played in bands while I was in college as well. And so it's just a wonderful education that I had. I loved the campus. I loved the vibe.
What dorms did you live in?
I lived in the Tercero dorms. So I lived in C building and F building for 2 years before.
The historic Tercero.
Yeah, right. I mean, I didn't know it was historic at the time.
Yeah.
We also had had some of the cows right across the street, so when the wind would blow from the west, we would know
had that special
that we were in an agricultural area. I think. And so I loved math and science. I took a lot of courses. I didn't have a strong idea when I came to UC Davis what I wanted to study, but I stumbled upon environmental toxicology. It just seemed like an interesting major. This was 1976 when I started as an undergraduate, and so concern about chemicals in the environment and the environment itself had just really ratcheted up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, this sounds interesting, and it sounds quite relevant to society. You know, when I look back on what I do, everything I've done, I've tried to do in terms of the big picture. You know, what are things that lots of people are concerned about and are influenced by? And I thought, okay, environmental toxicology would be a great way to do that.
Was there a class that sort of lit your fire, or was it just the thinking and
I think I'd had enough science, chemistry, biology, and math that you know, I looked at a whole bunch of different majors, and this just sort of stood out, and so it was exciting that way. I did take a survey course my sophomore year, Environmental Toxicology 10, which is this phenomenal course taught by Bob Krieger, and that sort of really hardened my interest in that. And it was a brand new major. It was the first environmental toxicology undergraduate program in the world, and when I joined, I was in the 4th class of that major. And it was a very small major because it had very expensive laboratory courses. So they only allowed 24 students in to the program in each class. So you had to apply to get into the program. But then it felt great because we're at a great big campus, but yet you're working with the same group of students. It felt like a very small college experience. And you get a chance to really know the professors as well. So I really enjoyed my time as an undergraduate. I wasn't that mature, and I knew that I should probably go to graduate school at some stage, but I was ready to work when I finished up. I didn't want to go right to graduate school, so I took a little time off from school, and I took a job with the California Department of Food and Agriculture in the Worker Health and Safety branch, studying worker exposure to pesticides. And my background was great for that, and I thought this was also a very interesting scientific thing. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing most of the time, but I was getting out and doing field studies and looking
based
at...
in Sacramento, but going all over the state.
I knew every little small agricultural town in California after a while. And we'd do field studies, and you know, we'd take the samples to the lab, and we'd try to figure out how much were these people exposed, and is that of concern or not. So it was a great experience for me. I really enjoyed that. But I also realized with a bachelor's degree, I wouldn't have much influence. You know, I could see the people that were making decisions and guiding what was going to be going on for the regulation and the science were people who had, you know, either years and years of training or advanced degrees. And so with a bachelor's degree, you know, that wasn't going to happen. And one day, my boss said, you know, we'd love all of our employees to have advanced degrees. And so I cornered him a little bit. I said, well, okay, well, you know, would I be able to go back to graduate school and still work here? And he said, yeah, sure. So the next day, I got a hold of Jim Cyber in environmental toxicology because I knew him well as an undergraduate, and they said, hey, I'm interested in graduate school. What can you tell me about this and that? You know, it wasn't a big search of 15 schools that I wanted to apply
you knew where
to. It was like
you wanted to go.
I could work and still go to graduate school. Is that going to work? And everything worked out. So for my first 2 years of graduate school, I pretty much took coursework and did a little bit of work in labs, but most of the time I was working full time with the state. So it was a challenge, but it was a really good experience too. So, and I'd also had gotten married. My wife Robin, we got married right as I was starting graduate school, and she was a staff member working in the Women's Resources and Research Center, which ultimately she became the director of and worked for 25 years. So we were already established in Davis. We had a house.
You're going to be an Aggie couple now.
Yeah, so now we're the Aggie couple. We had different last names, which was really convenient because that way, you know, sometimes we'd run into people in different ways and we could share information. So that was interesting. But anyway, so I enjoyed the the work at the state, and I learned a lot. And but I was really excited to go further on. So I was in the Ag and Environmental Chemistry graduate group. I worked for Henry Siegel in the vet school, and my research was on studying the metabolism of pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which were chemicals that were toxic to a lot of livestock that would be growing in rangelands. And that was pretty fascinating for me. I was only his second graduate student, and I had a lot of chemistry training, which he didn't have, so I brought those skills. And so I was pretty much given free rein to design my work, which was exciting, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. But I did manage to find a lot of really good people to work with that could give me guidance in addition to my major professor. So I was already building teams to try to address issues, realizing that I only know a little bit about this and I need to know more, and here's some people that do. So it was an enjoyable time. One of the career-changing aspects of my work in graduate school was to go out on a limb and to take a summer off from doing research. And I applied for an American Association for the Advancement of Sciences Mass Media Science and Engineering Fellowship. And I'm not sure why I did that, but basically I accepted the fellowship, and I was placed as a science writer for the Richmond Times-Dispatch newspaper. And they said, okay, now you're a journalist. Now cover science, write stories, and publish them in the paper. About all kinds of things. It wasn't like I could just talk about toxicology. No, I would talk about all kinds of things, and medical things and environmental things.
So was it for the summer?
It was just
3 months.
a summer program.
Yeah.
They give you a little 2 or 3 day boot camp in Washington, D.C., and they send you off to your media location, and you're there. The minute I get there, the science writer, at the days when newspapers had science writers, he immediately goes on vacation because he was strategic about that. He says, okay, I don't want to get in your way. Hit the ground running. Here's a few story ideas I have. Go through my mail. Good luck. Have fun. So it was such a different experience, but it gave me a great appreciation for the need to communicate about science, and how we as scientists are so focused on our details that we have a hard time taking it out to broader audiences. So this was really my first chance to communicate about topics. I wasn't a great science writer, but it was a really interesting experience. And then
you came back from that to finish your degree?
Right. I came back, finished my degree, and then wasn't sure what to do after that. So I applied for a lot of jobs. I applied for several academic jobs, and the only place I got an interview for was a UC position, a newly created Cooperative Extension toxicology position at UC Riverside. And probably the most important skill that I brought to that was the fact that I could communicate. I had a demonstrated record of communication, and that was very important. Every single applicant in that position had a PhD in a related field. I had no postdoctoral experience. I was still, 29 years old and pretty naive about the world, but somehow I got the interview. I remember breaking a rib in a softball accident about 2 days before my interview, so I looked and felt my best during during that interview, but somehow it all worked out. It was a great position, a chance for a position at a UC right out of graduate school. So
quite something.
I took that job.
Yeah.
So I was very, very happy about it.
And then, if I remember correctly, you commuted from Davis for that job.
Yes.
And you commuted. What was your mode of transportation?
Yeah. So we owned a house in Davis, and my wife Robin had a very good job at the Women's Center on campus, and we didn't have children at the time. So, she was applying for some positions down there, and we were just kind of letting things go where they will. But in the meantime, I would fly down every week. I'd fly on Mondays and fly back on Fridays. There were 3 or 4 other people I'd see on the planes that were doing that.
The UCD?
No.
Transportation?
No.
Out of Sacramento? Or?
Just flying commercial flights.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't so good for the pocketbook.
Yeah.
Paying for flights every week. But it was, when I got to Riverside, all I did was work. And that was a great way. I didn't feel a lot of pressure. I I was there by myself. I wasn't interested in a big social life. I was married already. And aside from, playing basketball at noon most every day, I was pretty much there. I would go to work, play basketball, go back to work, go have dinner, go back to work. And it was a great way to start my career. And right after I got there, the issue of pesticide residues in foods started becoming a really big, important topic. And so I started reading about that, and I realized that there was very little understanding of both the processes by which how we regulate pesticide residues in foods and the actual risks posed by pesticide residues in foods. And so a lot of my early work was designed to explain those types of things, as well as to demonstrate how if you make unrealistic assumptions about how much pesticide is used, how much is showing up on foods, how many types of pesticides are used, that sort of thing, you can dramatically overestimate the risks. And then that's the information that's getting conveyed to the consumers. Consumers are flipping out about this, and it generates tremendous legislative and public scrutiny.
Reaction, yeah.
So there's a need to take the science and to communicate about it. And I felt like, okay, well, I have a good chance to do that. And I didn't have a lot of competition. There just weren't other academics doing any of that work. I'd also made a decision early on in my career that I would not be receiving any funding from chemical companies or other outside interests. So I stayed very poor throughout my entire academic career, but I felt that it gave me perhaps a little more implied credibility.
You were an impartial voice.
Right, when I'm working with media folks. And having some media experience allowed me as well to maybe be a little more effective in those environments. So, so it was really a nice way to take my science and my communication, wrap it up in a package, and get it out there and hopefully make an impact.
And so 4 years there, and then tell us what happened next.
Well, 4 years, I really enjoyed my time at Riverside. It was Riverside's an excellent UC campus. I was a little bit isolated because there was nobody working in food, and I'd really moved into the food area with all these pesticide concerns. And I'd worked a lot with extension colleagues at UC Davis as well. We'd be on a lot of programs together up and down the state, talking about various food safety issues. So I knew people there. So I was able to work out with the deans at Riverside and John Kinsella, the new dean at UC Davis, and Ken Farrell, who was at the time the vice president of ANR, Agricultural and Natural Resources at the university. And we worked something out, and they created a position for me at UC Davis.
And Ted Huller was at UC Riverside at that?
Well, Ted Huller's an interesting connection because Ted Huller was the chancellor at UC Riverside when they created the position. I think it was, in fact, the last position that he christened at UC Riverside. And then he moved to become chancellor at UC Davis. So it was kind of a Huller connection. I think I was like the a player to be named later or something in the negotiations. I'm not quite sure how that worked. But anyway, I was delighted to come back to Davis and to join the food science department.
And who was chair of food science at that time?
Larry Merson was the chair at the time. And he was very supportive of the process. It was an unconventional move. One of the things that, one of the consequences was I didn't have laboratory space when I came there. So I had to figure out how to structure a research program that would not require a laboratory. So
that's a big switch.
One of the things I did was I tried to find good collaborations with some other faculty who could use some of my skills. So early on I worked with Dave Gilchrist in plant pathology, and we worked on alternaria toxins and fumonisins, which are naturally occurring toxins, which is always an interest of mine. And then I also developed a lot of work on risk assessment using various computer models to try to predict how much pesticide exposure we might have or exposure to other chemicals in the diet. So that was something you just needed a computer for. You didn't need a lot of fancy equipment that you had to maintain in a large laboratory.
And remind me, because when I think about food science and technology, of course, now I think about them, the department in the Mondavi complex, but that's not where food science was at the time you joined.
When I joined, we were in Cruise Hall, and we had pretty dilapidated facilities. It was an old place. We had this old pilot plant, which just really was not a great working environment. We were also decimated about the time I joined by early retirements.
The
I think in
VERIPs.
1993 we had the VERIP program, and so a lot of our senior faculty retired early. And there wasn't the money at the time to be hiring new people. So we were starting to become a real skeletal department at the time. There were plans to move that department to a different location out in the boondocks, out off of on the south part of Old Davis Road. And there was some state funding that had come along with that, but that was, it almost seemed like banishment from campus. We had a nice central location, even in an old building. We were going to be banished where nobody would find us again. So the department was really struggling. It was a great department. We had really great people, but we were limited in the number of faculty we had until the university came up with a Foods for Health initiative where different departments got together and provided proposals for several full-time equivalent faculty positions. And we were successful in getting several new faculty hired through the Foods for Health initiative. And that just restored the department. We brought in all these great brand new faculty doing exciting things, and it was really a joy to see all these people come in. We had lots of office space at the time because we'd lost so many people. So suddenly we were reborn. As a result of that. And then a few years later, Robert Mondavi provided several $1 million to help get the Robert Mondavi Institute built. So instead of being located in the boondocks off of Old Davis Road, now we're on Legacy Row. You enter the campus, you go by the vineyards, you see the beautiful, beautiful center, and all is great.
And you were on some of the search committees. I recall you telling me how that's a highlight of your career.
Right.
Of the hires at that time that are still here, or maybe one might be retired by now.
A couple that I chair. I'm very proud of that because you know one way you can leave a legacy is who you brought in or who you had an influence bringing in. So I was very pleased that Linda Harris, who just recently retired, a distinguished professor of cooperative extension in food microbiology and department chair and a scientific society chair, just a an outstanding career here. And I felt like, okay, I really pushed to get Linda in the system, so I'm really proud of that. And then on my way out, I chaired the search committee that brought in Selena Wang. And Selena is doing, fantastic work as well as a cooperative extension specialist in the department. So I feel like even though I'm not there anymore, I feel like I had an influence.
Yeah, you can see the path. Let's talk a little bit about cooperative extension. So kind of maybe you could explain what it is in your mind's eye and kind of what you mentioned about your role in communicating and how important, but for people who are not as familiar with cooperative extension and how it works in California.
Well, one of my best ideas that I had early on is that I didn't want to understand how it worked because I couldn't understand it. We had so many different systems, and then in fact right as I joined there was a big change about the reporting relationships and things like that. But in a nutshell, I look at cooperative extension as just the outreach arm of the university. We're doing teaching, we're doing research, but we need an interface to get that information into the hands of people who need that. So it's a system where you have campus-based specialists who have a particular area of expertise. We also have advisors throughout the state in most all of the counties who have their own expertise. And so working within that group, the goal is to get that information out there. So it might be, clientele might be farmers. They might be just the general public. They might be other educators. They might be legislators. And in my case, I really looked at my clientele as the general public and the legislators, because the areas that I was working in were of great concern to both of those groups. So I tried to structure what I did. But there was no one-size-fits-all in cooperative extension. Everybody develops their own programs, and all the programs evolve. There's a great evolution from the things that I started doing to the things that I ended up doing when I finished. You know, what a big change. And you just have to be flexible, I think, that way. I had the advantage of not having a big laboratory and not having a large group, so I could be a little more flexible than some of my other colleagues in that way. So I would jump from one thing to another thing. Try it out, see how it goes.
So you mentioned pesticides and regulations and safety, and then you mentioned food safety and the communication. Are other things related to those, or other areas you want to mention about your main activities over the career?
Well, probably my most notable activity was taking my music background and incorporating that into my educational efforts. And this was also pretty much by accident. You know, I'd played in bands in college. My mother was a piano teacher, so I was quite skilled on on keyboards. But
and when you played in bands, what did you play?
I played keyboard. I had, like my life savings was a Fender Rhodes piano at one. I think it was $700 or something. Everything I owned back when I was like a junior in college, I used to buy a Fender Rhodes piano, and that was pretty exciting to have that. So I had a piano at my house, but when my two children, Nathan and Christopher, were small, I couldn't play the piano in the house, because if I play, I would be a magnet. They would come over, they'd jump on me, they'd start banging on the keys, and it was, it's a nice father thing, but I could never really have a chance to practice or to play anything that I wanted to play. So I started doing some research, and I said, well, let me get some sort of electric piano synthesizer that I can use headphones on, so I can play. If they're asleep, I can go up and play something. And I realized the technology from the time I was playing in bands to this time, we're talking now about the mid-90s, the technology had changed so much. Now you could interface your synthesizers with computers, and you could do what's known as sequencing. You could basically put in all the different instrument parts in songs and then play them all out at the same time. So I said, wow, I can be the whole band. This is kind of fun, because if you've ever worked with band people, that's always a challenge to try to get people to do the right thing. So I started doing that, and then I'd always sort of tried to be clever with words. I always liked to change words around in songs. So I developed a couple of parodies of songs, and I performed them at a department holiday party. And I was terrible, because in all the bands I'd been in, I'd never sang. So I was just learning to sing. I was late 30s, and I'm just learning to sing for the first time. And so I wasn't very good, and I didn't know that, well, the songs that I chose to sing, they're really not the right kind of songs for me to sing. But I did it, and people were polite and nice, and they encouraged me. And then word got out, I was doing this, and then I think I ended up performing at the Agricultural Environmental Chemistry Graduate Group barbecue. It's kind of a funny thing. I would take some songs and make them about the science, make them really designed for sort of the tight-knit community of people who are doing it. A lot of inside jokes that general public wouldn't know about. And then that spurred more interest. And then the Institute of Food Technologists, which was a scientific organization that I did a lot of work with, they got interested in, they'd heard about the music. And I was part of a group of food science communicators, which were people like myself, a lot of extension people throughout the country, extension specialists, who were often involved in media outreach. So we'd get a lot of media training from them. We'd do a lot of interesting things. And they invited me to perform my music at a meeting in Chicago. So I I did that, and they loved it. And then suddenly the whole Institute of Food Technologists wanted to have my music. They invited me at their leadership conference, which was several hundred people for my big debut performance. I'd made some CDs that I could distribute there, and it just kind of took off from there. And then fast forward, I think I probably did 300 presentations in 37 different states. And I was constantly featured in newspapers, magazines, radio, television, interviews. It was different. It was fun, and it was different. But it also got information out. That was the exciting thing for me. So there came a period where I'd gone from, okay, I'm doing these sort of kind of narrowly focused songs for the insiders, and then tried to broaden them a little bit more. So I took some liberties. I went into the area of food microbiology, for which I am not trained, but that's where the area where the food safety issues are. That's where we have the millions of cases of foodborne disease occurring every year. So I started using my music as a way to educate about those types of issues. So that got picked up by food service training people, school food service associations, public health associations. I did performances for the CDC every year at some of their trainings. So it just kind of went nuts. I didn't plan any of that. It just sort of happened, and it was I'd pinch myself sometimes. I'd say, okay, I'm on a plane, I'm flying to this place, and somebody is going to, they're having me come and perform my music for them as a university faculty member. It's just
it's
a little bit strange, but it was a great ride. I really enjoyed that.
And I think that'll take us into, I'm going to list some of your honors, awards, and recognitions, because the
maybe before we do that, perhaps we could look at a brief clip.
Definitely. I think
okay.
that's
All right. Well, let's
super.
put that
let's
in and we'll
do
come
that.
back to this.
Yes.
We are the microbes, my friend, and we'll be dividing till the end. We are the microbes. We are the microbes. No time for chlorine, 'cause we are the microbes in your food. Thank you so much.
So you mentioned your professional society, the Institute of Food Technologists, and you were elected fellow in 2008, which seems like you were really mid-career at that point, in a sense, which incredible honor. And then you received their Bernard L. Oser Food Ingredient Safety Award. So you're really, recognized for your expertise, and then the Carl R. Fellers Award in 2020. So really, throughout the length of your career, you were contributing and you were being recognized for it, which is terrific. You also were the third annual Phillips and Hayes Lecturer at the University of Minnesota. So I assume I can only imagine your frequent flyer miles and the traveling that you had to do for all of this.
It was pretty crazy.
And then I think this is an incredible award, knowing CAST, which is the Council for Agricultural Science and Technology, Borlaug. And Borlaug is a very famous person when it comes to agriculture and conservation and science, and the Borlaug Communication Award in 2012. That would you say that's a real highlight? I
was very pleased, because that was really, that was
together.
all agricultural communication people. So
Yes.
people in all kinds of areas. In fact, it's an area that Davis has a lot of pride in, because
Yes.
two subsequent winners have both been Cooperative Extension faculty from your animal science
That's
department
right.
as well.
If I remember, is it Frank Mittloner?
Frank and Allison.
And Allison Van Eeneman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very
it's
proud of that.
so Davis is
On
quite
the
well.
map.
Well recognized. But that, I felt really great about that. That was that came at a kind of a crossroads in my career as well, because my son Christopher was he was diagnosed with a brain tumor when he was just starting his senior year in high school, and so he'd passed away just about the time that award was bestowed upon me. So it was kind of nice to have that recognition in a part of my life where things were really
difficult.
Challenging.
Yeah.
And I have to say the university was just incredible. I was so blessed to work at the university when I had,
The Aggie family spirit came through.
Exactly. It was a very
Yeah.
challenging time, and people said, "Do what you can."
Yeah.
And we'll cover for you.
Yeah, we
And
got you.
yeah, and it really, it was very genuine, and it felt that way all the way down from from the students to the staff to the faculty to people in the college as well. So that was, I sort of kind of lost a lot of focus there. A couple of years just kind of went by. I might come to my office and sit in my office and then come home and say, "What did I do today? I don't think I did anything today. I couldn't focus on it." It was tough for all of us, but having the university there, get our back was really quite nice. And I think, and then, subsequent to that, I think I got a lot of assistance. I was trying to get my feet back on the ground a little bit. I know our department chair at the time, Mike McCarthy, invited me to serve as vice chair of the department.
That's right. So you love your department. That's evident. And you've also served them really well. And as I know you've been great at service at your department level, at your college level, at Ag and Natural Resources, and your professional societies and the public. And you received awards related to all of that, but you also really contributed. You were chair of the Institute of Food Technologists, Food Science Communicators. You've been a member of their Food Science Communication committee from 1993 to probably even now.
Yeah.
You're still engaged. Distinguished lecturer for many years, chair of the Toxicology and Safety Evaluation Division. I also see that you did things for the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Health Organization, their committee for evaluating dietary supplements and safety. U.S. Food and Drug Administration, CAST, back to them, task force chair. So you really kept your hand in so many ways. And then also associate editor for the Journal of Food Science. That must have been a meaty activity, 2010 to 2015.
Yeah.
And editorial board member to the present, International Journal of Food Contamination. So your service record is amazing. I also see that you gave congressional testimony. I kind of want to ask you about that and what that was like.
Okay.
And especially in today's world.
Yeah.
So
I would say it's probably a little different today than it
Yeah.
was. A lot of the congressional testimony was actually early career when I got started on this whole pesticide food safety area. And Congress was really interested in that, so they would have a lot of hearings. They were trying to figure out how to change some of the regulations to incorporate science into the process.
So you were really welcome in terms
it
of
wasn't
telling.
it wasn't like, oh, let's get this person and grill them and and figure out which side they're on and make them look bad. It's it wasn't quite a battle at the time. And in fact, the final version of one of the bills that passed that dealt with all this was passed unanimously in the House of Representatives. I don't think you see that too often now.
Yeah.
But it's it sounds really exciting, but in some ways you're a little constrained. You write your testimony ahead of time, and they don't want you to go off script because they want the record, they want to enter it. So you're pretty much just reading what you want to say. But I have to say, one of my fondest memories from that was going to a subcommittee meeting that I was supposed to testify at, and then the introductory comments I was hearing from the committee chair, and I'm thinking, boy, this sounds really good. This is really, really good. And then I realized he was quoting verbatim from something that I had written. So I found that as a real stamp of approval that I'm reaching people.
And you still liked what,
Yeah, and
what
I
was
thought,
being
yeah,
said. You
and I
still
thought it was pretty good.
thought it was.
Yeah, I said, oh, that's good. I like that.
Uh-huh.
So I felt, okay, yes, he plagiarized my
Yeah.
work and didn't give me any credit for it. But at the same time, I felt like, okay, this is the audience I'm trying to get the information into. And they're picking it up, and they're telling everybody. They're leading off their hearing with this. So this is good. So I
Yeah.
must be doing something right.
I think you had told me in another conversation about your contributions in writing books or rewriting chapters that really were, very intensive, I think, and needed a lot of care and stewardship for the
Right.
science side and the communication side.
Yeah, so a lot of my work was doing those sorts of things. Early on, the whole University of California, the Agricultural Issues Center, based here in Davis, did a project on chemicals in the human food chain. And I had just gotten started at Riverside, and people were just finding out about me. They had somebody else in mind to do a lot of these things, and let's just say that person wore out his or her welcome. And they said, well, okay, what about this guy at Riverside? Maybe he can do it. And so I jumped in, and it was a great opportunity. A lot of good things happened to me when I was not the first choice. And so, it sort of goes to the say yes, take some chances, put yourself out there. I worry about a lot of our newer professors, and they're being managed and say, okay, you've got to really focus on this, you've got to do this, you can't be doing all this service, you can't be doing these other things. And you're limiting your opportunities. Maybe they don't go well. Maybe you have a bad experience, but you learn from that. But the things that can shape a career, you don't control very well, especially an extension career where you have a lot of leeway into what you can choose to do. So, that was a great experience for me. Okay, I'm not your first choice, but I'll do a good job, and
I can do this.
You'll know what I can contribute when I'm done.
Yeah.
So we ended up. I was the primary editor of the book that was the proceedings of all of those different things, and one of the best contributions was a paper that I wrote that got a lot of attention, looking at these different ways to evaluate cancer risks in food and what assumptions and whether the assumptions are valid or not. So, so it was a great experience for me, just to be in the right place at the right time. But when you're in the right place at the right time, you say yes.
What are your perspectives as you think about your career, and you've been retired for a couple of years now, and what you see at UC Davis? What do you think? What do you mentioned being worried about early or new faculty and how they can be overmanaged, maybe. What other sorts of things?
I do see things are changing. I think once COVID hit, then the university structure changed a lot. When I go onto campus, I don't see a lot of people on campus now, because people are working more remotely. And I think, I don't want to sound like, back in the old days, we used to do this. Yeah, we used to also have glass slides that would break when you're on an airplane. So there's a lot of good things that are moving forward. I'm still very impressed with the quality of work that is being done at UC Davis. It is a wonderful university and a very desirable university. We're attracting the top people, and they're doing top work. Of course, I'd like to see our country moving in a little bit different direction in terms of supporting scientific research, but things come and go, and the pendulum will move. So I think we'll try to correct and mitigate as much damage as we can as time moves on. But all I can say is I was privileged to be here. Some people have jobs. I had a career because I'm at a place where I can shape what I do. I'm expected to do good work, but how can you not do good work when you have people, the facilities, the infrastructure, and the leeway to do what you want to do? So I've just,
that special X factor of things.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't mention was teaching and advising, and I know you taught the Food Science and Technology 290 course for quite a while. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this was another thing that kind of fell in my lap, is where we have a first-year seminar course for all of our graduate students. And it was more to help them give presentations and things like that. And I took it upon myself to say, okay, I'm going to take my whole communication philosophy, and I have a year to work with these students twice a week.
So you didn't think it about as a 10-week stint that you had to
right.
get through. It was
it was. I had them for a year,
yeah.
and we would videotape them. I'd give them lots of feedback. We'd talk about things. We'd have a lot of discussions. It was also a great opportunity because this is a class that's just coming together. So everybody's in the same boat. They're all first years. They're coming from all over the world, over different parts of the United States. So they're bonding as we go. So I felt like almost like the den father or something of trying to get that going. So it was just really interesting for me. I love working with younger people and seeing their brains work. And then I've always had a bit of a bias towards there's so many bad presenters out there. And the models that a lot of the students see and emulate are not good models, where you just read your slide and you have terrible slides and you do this and you don't think about building a rapport with your audience. And so a lot of the things I'd learned in media training, as well as giving thousands of presentations throughout my career, I wanted to be able to share to the students. And there weren't really guidelines for all this, so my course evolved. It was fun. We would do, by spring quarter, we'd do media training, and we'd do mock interviews. So I'd go up there and I'd interview them, and I'd try to trip them up and try to see if they could come back to their communication points. And it was just a really great experience, but it allowed me to kind of see these students, and then I'd follow them throughout their careers.
Yeah, because you saw them early, and then you had the full 4 years.
And then I see so many of them are doing really interesting work that now they're on TV. Or now somebody's doing a feature on them. And the students are coming in and they're doing things with the media and they're communicating. And I feel like, I think they learned something from me.
And you didn't just do it for a year or 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah.
You did it for 10 years.
It was 10 years. I took ownership of the course. I enjoyed it. It was it was particularly later on in your career. You have a little more say into what you want to do. And I think as you move forward, you need to do more service. You need to take what you've learned and try to give back and contribute. So in some ways, this was service activity for me. In our merit and promotion system, I'm not really hired as a cooperative extension specialist. I don't have a teaching appointment.
Right.
I'm not hired to teach. And in fact, sometimes it can get a little contentious
Dicey.
about whether or not you're in the classroom because you're not hired to do that. And what responsibilities are you not meeting if you're in the classroom? So I would classify that as service to the department, and by and large, I think my colleagues were pretty supportive of that. Every now and then, I would have to, and I also had the music aspect, and you need to be taken seriously in your department, and most everybody could see, hey, this is a really good endeavor, and you're reaching people, and you're being effective. But it didn't necessarily have the metrics associated with it that we like to use when we evaluate merit and promotion.
Yes.
So I had one colleague who was never supportive, saying, this is a waste of time. This is not the type of thing a cooperative extension specialist should be doing. And then, but one way to get around that was to try to find something that had more academic currency. So I applied for a USDA grant. I applied with a bunch of co-investigators who were extension specialists and other people throughout the country who had been using my music in their trainings. And we wrote a grant to study how to incorporate music into food safety educational curricula for a wide variety of different audiences, and then to study that. So I was able to get the funding for that. That was exciting. And then we were able to publish 3 papers that showed, hey, if you make it fun and you make it different, people learn. Sort of the Sesame Street approach to everything. And we all intuitively understand that. But in the academic world, you better document it with some data. So so that was really helpful. I mean, it was nice for me to be able to get to get the grants, but then also to be able to do the work that came of that.
Well, let's move into also then talking about you're retired now, and what's your jam?
Yeah.
What-
So I recommend retirement very highly. I really love what I'm doing in retirement. I'm pretty much out of the science business. It's for the younger people to take on. I feel like I've done my part. I have no regrets. I enjoyed what I did, but it's time to move on. I'll take an occasional small consulting job, but I realized I don't like to work for other people. I've always, at the university, you work for yourself.
Yeah, you do.
And so, that's not that interesting to me. So I'm doing a lot of music. I've been playing for the last 8 years with a Sacramento area band called Keep On Truckin'. We're sort of a Woodstock tribute band, sort of the music era that we play. And we play 30 to 40 shows a year all throughout Northern California and Nevada. So that's really fun. I get to go and see things and do things that I never would experience in a normal life. So that's really fun. It's a great creative outlet for me. And then I'm also developing a solo act now. So I'm going in and starting to play at senior communities and just do my own music with all of my synthesizers and guitar and electronics, but try to find music that will entertain some of the residents there.
That's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, so I enjoy that. I spend a lot of time at those places. My mother just turned 95, so she's at a senior community here in Davis, so I'm able to visit her, 5 times a week and check in on her. So I really enjoy that. And then of course travel. My wife Robin and I love to travel. She's a phenomenal photographer, so we have these incredible slideshows, at the end of our trips, and we've traveled all over the world. We did a lot of travel before retirement, but now that we're retired, we get to go the times of the year when the crowds aren't there, but the weather's good, and so we've been, had safaris in Africa, went to Morocco, Japan, New Zealand, Scandinavia. We get around. We do a lot of trips, and then
I was going to say, then I have what I call on my cheat sheet here, the pride of Nathan.
Yes.
We shared children in the same age, so that's how I know Christopher and Nathan.
My son Nathan, we're really proud of him. He received a PhD in neuroscience at Northwestern University, and for the past 4 years he's been a research scientist at MIT, developing innovative interfaces to help improve personal performance, focusing on primarily sleep right now, trying to find ways to make us sleep better and to encode our memories better that way. He got some really exciting information.
Thank you, Nathan. We all need that encoding of...
it's very exciting work, and so he might have another year or so at MIT, and then he's going to be out looking for academic jobs too. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But we get to see him. He comes out here now for meetings, and we go back there. So we're really proud of seeing him do so well.
All right. Well, that was just wonderful. Any sort of final comments or things? It's hard to encompass everything in less than 60 minutes, but that's...
in preparing for this, it was really fun for me just to go back and to look at all the different things, and then you could kind of start to see patterns that maybe I never saw during the career.
You could see stepping stones as you look back.
You can see, like, wow, this makes sense, and this is related to this over here, which is kind of interesting.
Great opportunity.
So I just feel like, wow, it was just, I had a lot of control over what I did, and I was fortunate in a lot of ways, and it was just I couldn't ask for a better career. Great people, great environment, a chance to make an impact with my work. A lot of people can't do that, and then a wonderful retirement after that. You can't really ask for any more than that. So it's just just a lovely, very fast 28 years here at UC Davis. But I'm always naggy.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.